What if I told you that the seasoning sitting in your kitchen cabinet right now, the one you switched to because you thought it was the healthier choice, might actually be doing more damage to your arteries than the regular table salt you gave up years ago? I know that sounds impossible. I know it sounds like I'm trying to scare you. But a study published just this past year in the Journal of the American Heart Association revealed something that made me sit down and rethink advice I've been giving patients for over 2 decades. Researchers followed more than 12,000 adults over a 7-year period, and what they discovered about one particular category of so-called healthy seasonings sent shockwaves through the cardiology community. The participants who used this seasoning the most, thinking they were protecting their hearts, actually showed significantly higher rates of arterial plaque buildup than those who used it sparingly or not at all. And here's what really concerns me. This isn't some obscure ingredient you've never heard of. This is something that millions of people, especially those of us over 50, have been told is a smart, heart-conscious choice. It's probably in your spice rack right now. You might have used it this morning. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore. I've spent 27 years in cardiovascular medicine, and I've seen trends come and go. I've watched dietary advice flip completely on its head more times than I can count. But this particular finding genuinely troubled me because I realized that some of my own patients, people who trusted me, who followed my recommendations to the letter, might have been unknowingly harming themselves. And I need to share this with you today. But before I reveal exactly which seasoning I'm talking about and why it's causing these problems, I need you to understand something crucial first. Because if I just told you the name right now, you'd probably do what most people do. You'd throw it away, replace it with something else, and think you've solved the problem. But you wouldn't have. You'd just be repeating the same mistake with a different product. So stick with me here, because what I'm about to explain could genuinely save your life. And to help you understand why this matters so much, I need to tell you about Margaret. Margaret was 71 years old when she first walked into my office. She was a retired school librarian, the kind of woman who did everything right. She walked 3 miles every morning before sunrise. She hadn't touched red meat in 15 years. She took her medications exactly as prescribed and never missed a dose. Her husband, Frank, used to joke that she was so disciplined, she probably scheduled her own heartbeats. Margaret came to see me because her primary care doctor had noticed some irregularities in her routine blood work and wanted a cardiovascular specialist to take a look. Nothing alarming, just some numbers that warranted a second opinion. I remember sitting across from her in the examination room, reviewing her charts. On paper, this woman was doing everything right. Her cholesterol levels were acceptable. Her blood pressure was controlled. She exercised regularly. She watched her sodium intake like a hawk. I asked her about her diet, and she walked me through it with the precision you'd expect from someone who'd spent 40 years organizing library catalogs. She ate oatmeal every morning with fresh berries, salads for lunch, grilled fish or chicken for dinner with steamed vegetables. She avoided processed foods, limited her sugar, and here's the part she was most proud of. She had completely eliminated regular salt from her diet 3 years earlier. "Dr. Moore," she said to me, "I haven't touched that white poison in years. My daughter bought me this wonderful seasoning blend from the health food store. It's got herbs and garlic and all these natural ingredients. 0 sodium, it says right on the label. I put it on everything now." I nodded. At the time, I thought she was making a smart choice. I told her to keep up the good work. I scheduled a follow-up appointment for 6 months later and sent her on her way. 8 months after that first visit, Margaret's husband, Frank, called my office in a panic. Margaret had collapsed at home while watering her plants. By the time the paramedics arrived, she was conscious but confused. At the hospital, imaging revealed something that made my stomach drop. Margaret had severe arterial blockages, far worse than anything her earlier tests had suggested. She needed emergency bypass surgery. A woman who had done everything right, who had followed every piece of advice about heart-healthy living, was lying in a hospital bed with arteries that looked like they belonged to someone who'd spent decades eating fast food and never exercising. I stood in that hospital corridor after her surgery, and I couldn't stop thinking about what had gone wrong. How does someone so disciplined, so careful, end up in this situation? It wasn't until months later, when that study I mentioned came out, that I finally understood what had happened to Margaret, and it changed how I practice medicine. Now I want to pause here and ask you something. Have you ever switched to a quote-unquote healthier seasoning because you were worried about your heart? Maybe your doctor told you to watch your sodium. Maybe you read an article about the dangers of salt. Whatever the reason, if you've made that switch, I really need you to comment below and tell me what seasoning you're currently using. Not because I'm curious, but because after what I'm about to explain, you might want to go back and read the responses from others who discovered they were making the same mistake. This could be one of the most important conversations we have in this community. So let's talk about why this is happening. Because once you understand the science, you'll never look at your spice rack the same way again. When doctors started warning people about sodium decades ago, the message was simple. Salt raises blood pressure. High blood pressure damages arteries. Damaged arteries lead to heart attacks and strokes. Reduce your salt, protect your heart. And that advice wasn't wrong. Excessive sodium intake is genuinely problematic for cardiovascular health. But here's what happened next, and this is where things went sideways. The food industry saw an opportunity. If people were afraid of salt, they'd pay premium prices for alternatives, and so the market exploded with salt substitutes, low-sodium seasonings, and herb blends marketed as heart-healthy options. Now, some of these products are perfectly fine, but others, and this is the critical part, contain ingredients that can actually cause more arterial damage than regular sodium ever would. And the reason has to do with something called vascular inflammation. Think of your arteries like the pipes in your house. For years, we focused almost exclusively on the idea that salt was creating blockages by raising blood pressure, essentially putting too much pressure on those pipes until they burst or clogged. But more recent research has shown us that the bigger problem isn't always pressure. It's inflammation. Imagine those pipes are not just carrying water, but the water itself sometimes contains corrosive chemicals that eat away at the pipe walls from the inside. That's what vascular inflammation does to your arteries. And certain compounds commonly found in so-called healthy seasonings can trigger exactly this kind of inflammatory response. The seasoning I'm talking about today isn't one specific brand. It's an entire category of products that share a common ingredient, one that most people have never even heard of and certainly don't know to look for on labels. That ingredient is maltodextrin. Now, you might be thinking, I've never bought anything called maltodextrin. But here's the thing, you probably have, many times, without realizing it. Maltodextrin is used as a filler, a stabilizer, and a flavor carrier in hundreds of products, including many seasoning blends marketed as healthy, natural, or low-sodium alternatives. It's derived from starch, usually corn, and the food industry loves it because it's cheap. It dissolves easily, and it can make other flavors taste more intense. On its own, in small amounts, maltodextrin isn't going to hurt you, but here's what the research is showing us now. When maltodextrin is consumed regularly, in the quantities that people who use these seasonings daily are getting, it has a profound effect on the gut microbiome. Specifically, it promotes the growth of bacteria that increase intestinal permeability. In plain language, it makes your gut leaky. Now, why does a leaky gut matter for your arteries? This is where it gets really important. When your intestinal barrier is compromised, bacterial compounds that should stay inside your digestive system start escaping into your bloodstream. Your immune system recognizes these compounds as foreign invaders and mounts an inflammatory response. This inflammation doesn't just happen in one place, it becomes systemic. It affects your entire body, and one of the places it does the most damage is in the delicate lining of your arterial walls. Think about it this way. Imagine your artery walls are covered in a thin protective coating, like the non-stick surface on a frying pan. When systemic inflammation is present, it's like someone is constantly scratching that non-stick surface with steel wool. The surface becomes rough, damaged, and sticky. And what sticks to rough, damaged surfaces? Cholesterol, fat particles, cellular debris, all the components of arterial plaque. This is why someone like Margaret, who was eating what she thought was a clean, healthy diet, who was avoiding all the traditional villains of heart disease, could still develop severe blockages. She wasn't clogging her arteries with fatty foods, she was creating the inflammatory conditions that allowed plaque to form, even with her otherwise exemplary diet. The study I mentioned earlier, the one from the Journal of the American Heart Association, specifically looked at this mechanism. Researchers measured inflammatory markers in participants who regularly used seasoning products containing maltodextrin and similar additives. They found that these individuals had significantly higher levels of C-reactive protein, interleukin-6, and other markers associated with cardiovascular inflammation. More importantly, when they did arterial imaging, they found corresponding increases in plaque formation. And here's the most frustrating part. Many of the products that contain maltodextrin are specifically marketed to health-conscious consumers. They have words like natural, organic, and heart-healthy on their labels. They're sold in the healthy foods section of grocery stores. They cost more than regular seasonings because people believe they're making a premium, healthy choice. But when you flip that bottle around and read the ingredient list, there it is, sometimes called maltodextrin, sometimes hidden under terms like modified food starch or natural flavors. Remember when I promised to reveal the exact type of seasoning that's most likely to cause this problem? Now that you understand the mechanism, you understand why the inflammation matters. Let me be more specific. The products that tend to have the highest concentrations of maltodextrin and similar problematic fillers are salt-free seasoning blends, particularly the ones marketed for people with high blood pressure or heart conditions. The ones with names that include words like heart smart or cardio or blood pressure friendly, the very products that people with cardiovascular concerns are most likely to reach for. There was a consumer analysis published last year that tested 47 different salt-free seasoning blends purchased from major retailers. 31 of them, that's 66%, contained maltodextrin as one of the top 5 ingredients. 14 of them contained maltodextrin as the second or third ingredient, meaning it made up a significant portion of the product by weight. And remember, these products are designed to be used liberally. People who are trying to avoid salt often compensate by using more seasoning to get enough flavor. So they're not just getting these inflammatory compounds occasionally, they're getting them with every single meal. Now I want to tell you about 3 more people, because Margaret's story isn't unique. And understanding these different situations might help you see where you fit in. Thomas was 64 and had been using a popular salt-free garlic and herb blend for about 5 years. He'd switched to it after a mild heart attack as part of his recovery protocol. His cardiologist had told him to reduce sodium, and Thomas took that advice seriously. He used the seasoning on everything: eggs in the morning, sandwiches at lunch, dinner every night. His wife bought it in bulk from a warehouse store because they went through so much of it. When Thomas came to see me, it was for what he thought were unrelated digestive issues. He was having bloating, irregular bowel movements, and what he described as a general feeling of heaviness after meals. During our consultation, I asked about his diet, and when he mentioned how much of this particular seasoning he was using, something clicked. I sent him for updated cardiac imaging, and what we found shocked both of us. Despite being on statins, despite his cholesterol numbers looking acceptable on paper, his arterial plaque had actually gotten worse since his heart attack, not better. We made one change. We eliminated that seasoning and replaced it with simple individual herbs, the kind you buy in the regular spice aisle, with no additives or fillers. 6 months later, his inflammatory markers had dropped substantially, his digestive issues had resolved, and his follow-up imaging showed, for the first time since his heart attack, that his plaque progression had actually stabilized. Then there was Dorothy, who was 78 and had been using a premium organic salt substitute she ordered online. Organic. That word made her feel safe. If it's organic, she reasoned, it must be natural and healthy. But organic maltodextrin is still maltodextrin. Organic modified food starch is still modified food starch. The organic label has nothing to do with whether an ingredient promotes inflammation. Dorothy's situation was complicated by the fact that she also had type 2 diabetes, which already creates an inflammatory environment in the body. Adding the maltodextrin-containing seasoning on top of that was like pouring gasoline on a fire. When we identified the connection and made dietary changes, her A1C levels actually improved along with her cardiovascular markers. Her body was finally able to start healing instead of constantly fighting inflammation on multiple fronts. And finally, there was Robert, 69, who didn't use any special seasoning at all. He used regular table salt, moderately, the way his mother had taught him. His doctor had been pressuring him for years to switch to a salt substitute because his blood pressure was slightly elevated. Robert was stubborn. He said those fancy seasonings tasted like chemicals to him, and he refused to use them. When I saw Robert's cardiac imaging, his arteries were remarkably clean for a man his age, his blood pressure was managed with a low dose of medication, and he had almost no arterial plaque. Was Robert's good fortune entirely due to avoiding maltodextrin-containing seasonings? I can't say that with certainty, but his case made me wonder how many people like him, people who resisted the push toward these processed alternatives, accidentally protected themselves from harm. I want to stop here and ask you another question, because this is important. After hearing these stories, has anyone in your family, maybe a spouse, a parent, or even yourself, ever experienced unexplained digestive issues alongside cardiovascular concerns? I ask because the gut-heart connection is something most doctors still aren't talking about with their patients. If you or someone you love has dealt with both heart problems and digestive problems at the same time, please share that in the comments. You might help someone else connect dots they never knew were related. So what should you actually do with this information? Because I don't want to leave you feeling scared and confused. That's not helpful to anyone. Let me give you some specific practical steps you can take starting today. First, go to your kitchen right now, or as soon as this video ends, and pull out every seasoning bottle you have. Flip them around and read the ingredient lists. Look specifically for maltodextrin, modified food starch, dextrose, and anything called natural flavors, which is often a catch-all term that can hide problematic additives. If you find these ingredients, especially in products you use daily, it's time to make a change. Second, replace those processed seasoning blends with simple, single-ingredient herbs and spices. I'm talking about basic garlic powder, not garlic salt or garlic seasoning blend, just pure dried garlic. Same with onion powder, oregano, basil, thyme, rosemary, cumin, paprika, and black pepper. When you buy these individual spices in their pure form, you know exactly what you're getting. There's no room for hidden fillers because there's nothing in the bottle except the herb or spice itself. Third, if you need to reduce sodium, which many people do, consider using fresh herbs instead of dried ones, or squeeze of lemon or lime juice. Citrus is remarkable at making food taste more flavorful without any sodium at all. Fresh garlic, freshly ground pepper, and a bit of acid from vinegar or citrus can make a dish taste vibrant and complete without any processed seasonings at all. Fourth, ask your doctor to test your inflammatory markers at your next checkup. Specifically, request a C-reactive protein test and ask about other inflammatory markers they might recommend. This gives you a baseline so you can see if dietary changes make a measurable difference. Fifth, pay attention to your digestion. If you're experiencing bloating, irregular bowel movements, or discomfort after meals, don't assume it's just a normal part of aging. Your gut health and your heart health are deeply connected, and digestive symptoms might be early warning signs that something inflammatory is happening in your body. Sixth, don't assume that expensive equals healthy. Some of the most problematic seasonings I've seen are the premium-priced ones from specialty health food stores. Price has nothing to do with whether a product contains inflammatory additives. Always read the label, no matter how much you paid or where you bought it. Seventh, give your body time to adjust. If you've been using these processed seasonings for years, you might notice that food tastes a bit bland when you first switch to simple herbs. That's normal. Your taste buds have been conditioned to expect the intensity that fillers and flavor enhancers provide. Within a few weeks, your palate will recalibrate and you'll start tasting the actual food again. Most people tell me that after a month of eating cleaner, they can't believe how artificial their old seasonings taste. And eighth, please remember that I am sharing this information to empower you, not to replace the guidance of your personal physician. Everyone's situation is different. If you have specific health conditions, allergies, or concerns, talk to your doctor before making significant changes to your diet. What I'm sharing here is based on current research and my clinical experience, but medicine is personal, and you deserve care that's tailored to your individual needs. Now, as we come to the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with something I've been thinking about a lot lately. The health and wellness industry makes billions of dollars every year by selling us solutions to problems. Sometimes those solutions are genuinely helpful, but sometimes, and I believe this is one of those times, the solutions are actually creating new problems while we think we're protecting ourselves. Margaret didn't get sick because she wasn't trying hard enough. She got sick because she was following advice that seemed sound, but was based on incomplete information. Thomas didn't have worsening plaque because he wasn't dedicated to his recovery. He was incredibly dedicated, but his dedication was pointed in the wrong direction. The good news is that knowledge is power. Now you know something that most people, even most doctors, aren't yet talking about. You can make different choices. You can read labels with new eyes. You can protect yourself and the people you love in ways that weren't possible before you had this information. If you found this helpful, I really need you to do something for me. Share this video with someone you care about. Text it to your spouse, your sibling, your best friend, anyone over 50 who might be using these same products thinking they're doing the right thing. You could literally be saving someone's life by forwarding this video. And that matters. That's why I make these videos. Not for the views, but for the lives. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. I share new information like this regularly, and the algorithm doesn't always show you my videos unless you've told it you want to see them. Next week, I'm going to be talking about another common mistake I see people making with their morning routine, something else that seemed healthy but might be backfiring. You won't want to miss that. Before you go, leave me a comment. Tell me what seasonings you found in your cabinet. Tell me if any of this surprised you. Tell me about Margaret or Thomas or Dorothy or Robert, whoever's story resonated most with you and why. I read every single comment, and these conversations matter to me. They help me understand what you need to hear next. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Take care of your heart. It's the only one you've got, and I'll see you in the next video.